So there was this experiment in behavioural psychology where they gave people either a chocolate bar, in this case a bloody lovely Tony's Choco Lonely chocolate bar, or a mug. And then they asked both groups, do you want to trade what you have for the other item? And in both cases, they found that neither group wanted to trade for the other one. Now you could look at this experiment and say, well, maybe just both things are good in and of themselves, and it's a really tough choice between the two. But what the behavioural psychologists say is that this is just one experiment that goes to show that once we possess something, we hold on to it tightly. Now, this effect might not seem like a big deal, but it can actually profoundly affect the entire course of your life if you're not careful, and cost you in relationships, thousands or millions of dollars that you might make over your lifetime, or in finding the career of your dreams. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Stephen Hussey, and here we talk about the 3 R's: reading, writing, and rationality. Don't check the spelling on those. Now, in psychology, this is known as loss aversion, which is the propensity to treat potential losses as far more painful than we treat the pleasure of potential gains. So if you've ever moved house, you've probably come across this effect before. You look through all of your possessions and you're thinking about what to keep, what to throw away, what to bring to the new house, and suddenly a bunch of these things that maybe you really didn't even know you had, you barely used them, they felt like junk at the time, suddenly when you're faced with the prospect of getting rid of them, your hand shakes a bit, you start thinking a bit quickly, and you think, maybe I don't want to get rid of this. Maybe this will be a massive mistake later. Maybe actually this thing is really valuable and I shouldn't throw it away. The endowment effect is similar, and what it basically says is that once you possess something, you value it in a different way than if you were buying it today. If you saw it in a shop window, you might not really value that thing anymore or even want it, but the fact that you own it makes you feel like it's worth more. For example, my lovely Arcade Pro. Now, I actually bloody love this thing, but what if I saw this as some stupid lockdown purchase that I made when I was bored at home, and I bought myself a little TV arcade machine, and now I think, why did I buy that? It's sitting in the corner. What have I done with my life? What am I doing? And then someone came along and said, I'll give you 3/4 of what you paid for that Arcade Pro. Or why don't you donate it and be generous? And I might think, you're not getting my Arcade Pro, sir. Get the hell out of here. You just want the Simpsons arcade game all for yourself. I'm not gonna leave you. So that's the endowment effect. And you might say, well, what does it matter if I start to like some of my old junk I've got kicking around? What's the problem with that? So I hold on to a few things, you hoard a few things, you get rid of some, you keep others. What's the big deal? Well, in many cases, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal when it comes to bigger decisions in our lives. And when we look at certain options and opportunities and we only ever frame them through the potential loss we could face from them. For example, many people I've spoken to won't start investing. Even if they are now making a decent salary, maybe their first decent salary, and they're saving some money each month, they still have an aversion to the idea of putting some in the stock market, because when they think about it, partly they may just not understand a lot of the stock market, and that's one thing, but they also say, quite rightly, but the stock market can go down. There are stock market crashes. There are times when your money may drop 20, 30, 50% in a massive bear market, and they think, well, I can't face the idea of putting $1,000 in the stock market and suddenly tomorrow it's worth half of that, so I'm just not going to invest at all. Of course, if you know about the history of the stock market, you see over time that the trend goes up. As long as the world, as long as major economies like the US are growing, if your money is in a safe index fund, over 20, 30, 40 years, your probability of making money becomes about 99% if you are a long-term investor. Of course, the problem is that people only think about the short-term pain. I could lose here. If I could lose money, that's a bad thing. Any potential for loss is always a bad thing, so I should never expose myself to losses. So in the stock market case, the cost is obvious. You could cost yourself tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars by not investing today because you're scared of losing money in the next 6 months instead of thinking about the next 60 years. But What about other areas? There's also relationships. People could be in a relationship that's clearly massively suboptimal, one where they feel miserable, they feel like they're not getting their needs met, they feel unhappy and they complain about it, but then they think to themselves, but the breakup is going to be painful. If I have to do this now, our families know each other, or I've been in this relationship for 3 years, there's going to be a whole process, I'm going to have to move out, that's going to be painful, I'm going to have to change my life, I'm going to have to do all these things. And so they calculate, well, the next 6 months, if I break up from this relationship, are going to be horrible. But by doing that, they might be giving themselves 60 years of pleasure of not being in this relationship that's draining them. Or the fact that they might have massive exponential amounts of pleasure from finding a partner that fits them better. But all they can focus on is the pain of this breakup. I'm going to hurt this person. This is going to be a mess. People are going to judge me. We do this in careers as well, where we have a career. Someone might be an accountant and they think, I hate accounting now. I'm so bored of it. But if I want to go and retrain as an engineer that I really want to do and work on cars, that's going to require a whole immediate step down or a loss of status, or I'm going to have to go through a period of painful retraining, of learning something new, of finding a new fit in a job. And even though this might be a job that causes us immense anguish, immense daily suffering, just constant dissatisfaction, we fail to see the satisfaction we'll get from taking this loss now. So I think this holds people back in all sorts of ways, and one of the most obvious solutions to it is to just massively expand your time horizon. We often only look at how a decision will affect the next 3 to 6 months instead of the next 3 to 6 years, instead of the next 30 to 60 years. And when you actually have a longer time horizon, the immediate pain seems much less acute, and the potential pain of not doing this now seems far, far greater. And that's the sort of trick you have to play on yourself. You have to realize the pain of inaction is worse than the short-term pain of taking action today. And look, obvious disclaimer, there are all kinds of risks that are not worth taking. Risks for your health, risks for your loved ones, risks for your that will seriously financially impair you. These are all risks that are not worth taking. But I contend that there are many more risks in life that we miss out on because we have these imaginary big losses in our mind, or we only focus on the immediate potential pain instead of the long-term gain. And the more we can expand the time horizon, the more we bring those future gains to the forefront of our mind and just kind of get satisfaction from the action itself. It's like investing. If you put $100 in the investment account this month, or $500, whatever it is, you can just pat yourself on the back and feel good and start to think, in the future, look at all this is going to add up to. Look, if I calculate the compound interest, look at what this is going to mean for me when I'm 65, rather than the fact that the stock market could go down next year or in the next 6 months. And then we can just relax and say, the process is doing its work. Same in relationships. If we get out of a bad relationship, we can at least say to ourselves, what I've done right now is I've saved me and this person years and years of anguish and suffering and dissatisfaction. So I'm actually doing us both a favor by quitting this relationship now and taking on this pain now, instead of stretching out pain over a lifetime. Let me know in the comments where you struggle with loss aversion and where you haven't taken action right now in your life because you're afraid of potential loss. And if you think for 1 second I'm getting rid of this thing, you are out of your damn mind. No. You get your own arcade machine. All right?